Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining myself and the lovely Heather Kalt for another episode of Uncomplicating HR. Again, my name is Mindy Flanagan, your host. I think this is episode 8. It might be episode 9. I don't know. I'm letting the video guys stay on top of that at this point. But I am very excited today to be joined by Heather Kalt, who joined the Inspiring HR team in 2025, but has lots of years of HR experience. And I'm excited for her to do her first Uncomplicating HR with me today. But I'm also really excited that she and I get to collaborate on this topic, because one of the gifts I find as a leader is I have my vision of foundational HR or people ops or infrastructure, and why that adds value to small businesses. But then I get myself around like-minded people who might explain it better than I do. And so I asked Heather to join me today, and we're going to talk foundational HR basics. So Heather, welcome. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. So, as Minji mentioned, I started with Inspiring last year, but have over 20 years of experience with retail, management and also HR. So various industries, different size companies, really have been focusing on small to medium companies and groups that they have within their infrastructure and supporting them on all things foundational HR.
All right, very good. Foundation, basics. You got to have a foundation before you can build up and, like I say, grow to scale. So, in your experience, in the totality of your career and all these different industries that you've worked in, why is the juice worth the squeeze? Why do people bother with HR? Why do people bother with putting thought and intention behind their people ops systems and processes? What's your take on it?
I think to start, I mean, at the end of the day, it really affects the bottom line. So, putting it into a context for small businesses to understand, it's going to affect your bottom line and give you a better return on your investment in certain areas if you're going to invest ahead of time. So you've got different areas that I think you can start with. You don't have to have large HR systems, but just some foundation of hiring practices, onboarding, manager tools, have a good understanding of compliance around pay clarity,
Mm-hmm.
and basic policies to have for your infrastructure.
If you have nothing, where do you start?
I would say to start with your employee handbook. That's going to generate those kind of initial policies that you then can dive into some of the other compliance areas or invest in other areas after that of where you think you need to go.
What do you think is the most common? This could be one or two questions, so I'm just going to tell you both. Common misconceptions about an employee handbook, or why do people avoid creating an employee handbook as long as possible? What's up with that? It's easy for HR people to say we don't get it, but we write them, we know what's in them, and if we've been doing it for a while, it doesn't seem hard to us at all. Reverse engineer. You're the small business owner that's gone from 5 employees to 15 employees. You've probably been around CEOs and other companies that said, do you have an employee handbook? You might be the CEO that rolls your eyes. Why? What is the hang up with the employee handbook?
I think some leaders and owners look at it as, well, we don't have to have such structure or context around certain things. It hasn't come up yet, so it's really kind of, I think, equating it to quote unquote an insurance policy, because you are going to come up with situations and things that this then will be proactive for you to be able to navigate. So I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of business owners don't realize, like, if they haven't had this situation or the need, that's wonderful, but there will come a day that there is going to be a need to have that. So you want to be proactive about it. I also think that they, don't see the need for some of the policies in relation to, how does this affect operations,
Mm-hmm.
like, so they may not understand the connection of the gap that's there, so they don't know what they don't know too.
Right, right. Well, for me, I think of a story I could tell from late last week and early this week. Entrepreneurial gentleman in Maryland, thankfully We're going to be welcoming him into our client community next week. I'm super excited about it, but this stuck with me. He said, if I don't get, there's a type of leader I want to be. If I don't get some structure around hiring, performance management, what I expect out of people, I'm going to start to like them less than I like them now. And I don't want that to happen. I can't, without the structure, I don't know where to make the judgment calls in the moment. And then your gut tells you, am I letting some people get away with things that other people aren't? And then you worry about unfairness. And then all of a sudden you get a little bit of a culture erosion. And he's just become increasingly sensitive to that. That and the fact that, he's got 20 employees, no internal HR help whatsoever. We wouldn't expect him to. Doesn't really have an admin assistant that he can farm some of this stuff off to. And so he's taking it all on himself. And that's, again, you take it all on yourself with no structure. And you're the business owner working 60 hours a week trying to firefight all day long. And no, you probably can't be your best leader under those circumstances. So what are some of the mistakes we see with employee handbooks? I mean, you've looked at enough good and not so good employee handbooks. So what are some of the mistakes we see in these documents?
Yeah, I think, that ties into, to go back a little bit in that other question of setting expectation in a relationship, in any type of relationship, of having clear expectation, clear understanding so everybody's on the same page. Mm-hmm. So I think some of the mistakes are not being clear enough, and having really understanding of complexity that can come into play. Not having certain policies that, maybe they don't have, again, the need for right now, but you will have come a day that you need that situation. Like we just had a client that has a weather situation where they actually...
Are they in Virginia? Because we're about to get 2 feet of snow.
Yes, they are. So it's dealing with that. And they're an industry that, helps with, helping with the infrastructure for the city and clearing roads and stuff like that. So they didn't have a policy for, helping the business stay afloat, with an expectation of what the employees need to comply with when it comes in these situations. So now they're trying to figure out, can we mandate something?
People love
flying by the seat of their pants, Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of other mistakes are really just around, not doing the right research or having the right resources too, to make sure that your compliance is aligned with state, local, and federal laws. And just, could also be adding operational things to an employee handbook. That's more of an employee manual of operational procedures and not necessarily relevant to an employee handbook too. I think that's a big
and that's
area.
The funny thing, that I could mention lots of missteps in employee handbooks. And I often remember that if you're a small business owner not getting HR help in writing your handbook, and you're your true entrepreneurial self and you write it, what you think is reasonable because you're the one that took out the business loan and you're the one that takes the risk to bed with you every night, whatever mandates or asks you put on employees, you might think is reasonable because you're going out on a limb and hiring them, so to speak. But what you think is reasonable because of the risk you took, that might conflict with the labor law standards. So those are some of the things, of course, we always look at when we are checking an employee handbook to see, for our new clients, they always want to know, can this handbook be saved? Normally it can't be. Sorry. Like the one I worked on a couple of weeks ago was last updated in 2016. It was 10 pages, no table of contents, and they had 50 or more employees. So just, FMLA alone needed to be in there and wasn't. So, yeah. What do you think? The other point I was going to make with that is that idea of being efficient, right? We're going to turn the handbook, which reasonably for a business, if you're just a business with less than 50 employees, say in my home state, Virginia, or your home state, Florida, you probably get away with 30, 35 pages. You're over 50, probably not. But when you decide that you want to be efficient and turn your handbook into a policies and procedures manual, now you're looking at a document that is, first of all, it's going to have to be updated more often than a handbook who might occasionally have to be updated because of federal or state labor law changes. So, what do you find yourself advising clients on in terms of things that should come out of the handbook? Give me some examples.
Yeah, I mean, just around operations of, timekeeping system. So, you want to have the details and clarity around what is required by the employee, but maybe not the steps, of how to navigate the system to do your timekeeping for the employee.
You mean click here, go here, use this login, this,
Exactly. It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
need the
yeah,
step by
yeah,
step
yeah.
process of SOP of how to manage the system, so to speak, but more the details of what's the compliance expectation around the system.
Right. The other thing that, what's always interesting to me is where some of the handbooks, we look at it and we say, probably can't save this employee handbook. And we're also going for long shelf life here. And when we talk about long shelf life and letting one document serve multiple purposes, here's a perfect example. Why am I putting your specific dollar value contribution towards health insurance in the employee handbook? That's likely to change every few years, right? If you're giving employees a flat contribution of $400 towards health insurance, are you going to draw a line in the sand and say that's definitely going to be the number year after year after year? So it's a silly example, but a dollar value specifics and proper names, I try and keep out of a handbook at all costs. Because it's like you're going to put the proper name of your general manager in your employee handbook, you're pretty much saying what? They're always just going to be the general manager? Like titles is better, not proper names of individuals, except maybe mentioning the owner's name on the welcome letter and having a signature for him or her, from him or her. That would be fine. Is there a favorite part of the employee handbook you like to work on?
Great question. I really enjoy helping businesses navigate paid time off.
Ah, in
Understanding,
terms of complying with labor laws or as a part of a modern day workplace approach to attracting and retaining talent?
I would say the latter.
Okay.
Of course, we're going to be compliant with the labor laws and whatever state nuances there are, but tying the value of what that system or policy can be for employee engagement, employee retention, being competitive with the market, looking at other options and trying to be creative when we can be.
What would be what is a current sort of outdated practice when it comes to paid time off? What are some of the things we see and we're like, that's kind of from like the 80s or the 90s. Like, what are you seeing?
Outdated practice. I'm not sure.
How about too little PTO given?
Too little. Yep.
Yeah.
I guess that, I just assume that that's not going to happen. So yeah, not
I
having
just
a
looked at a
policy.
handbook where you had to work 2 years full time before you got 5 days vacation. So extreme, extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
not competitive. All right, well, that's probably when we could talk handbook for the whole time, but I don't want to. Tell me about in your work as a creative HR practitioner, where is the handbook helpful once that's settled to create other things in your people ops infrastructure that should be a part of that foundation that we're talking about?
I think for me, a big component is what does your orientation look like?
New
Yes, you've
employee
got
onboarding. Mm-hmm.
your employee onboarding
Mm-hmm.
because, that's your first, you know, meeting, your initial instinct of, am I going to enjoy this? Do they have everything in place for me to be successful at this job, or vice
Because we
versa?
are talking about people who are quite nervous, right? They're getting
Mhm.
acclimated to a new job, a new company. And for small businesses, if you don't have your act together somewhat, you could have talented people wondering if they made the right employment choice. Is that fair?
Yeah, very
Yeah,
much so.
yeah, yeah.
And if
So
they're
I,
aligned with the company and their values and they don't understand or know yet what the company really sees as their brand,
mhm.
outside of reading their website and things, but understanding what their brand is for their employees.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk more and more about brand, which is really synonymous with culture. We got this thing that we tell the world on our website, this is who we are and this is who we do. But there's also, can there be uniformity in terms of being true to that with your own culture, which is where, of course, vision, mission, values, and where those show up in your people ops infrastructures is always critical so that you actually are what you say you are. Because wouldn't it be fair to say in a modern day workplace, employees are looking to work for authentic organizations? Fair? Yeah.
Very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the handbook's great. New employee onboarding's figured out. Give me another part of this foundational recipe. What else?
I mean, your pay, from a compliance standpoint and also competitive, right? Like understanding, are you classifying employees correctly? Then there's the pay after you understand classification. Um, but, employee, are they full time, regular part time? Are they temporary? Understanding the differences and nuances of what you're needing as you're hiring.
So let's pretend that I'm a new client assigned to you, and we have finished the handbook. And I remember during the handbook, you walked me through the employee category section of the handbook. And it sort of piqued my interest, but I didn't want to prolong the handbook discussion. So now here we are at next juncture of work. And I say to you, here's our payroll register from the last time we processed payroll. Help me understand where employee categories show up on this payroll register and why do I care? What does that conversation look like?
I think it's got to start with, understanding, okay, I see your title says, client manager, but what does the role actually entail? Understanding and really talking and partnering with them to understand the role nuances to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we're classifying based off of duties, and not just a title.
Mm-hmm.
To start the conversation there and then go further to fully understand what are the expectations of any type of supervisory component with any of the roles. A lot of manager titles, don't necessarily have employee supervisory roles, but they're managing clients or customers and things like that. So that goes into the detail of what the roles and responsibilities are.
Mm-hmm.
But really looking at that and then understanding what we're classifying first, talking about your business too, understanding, if you've got a variation of full time, part time, do you ever have the need for temporary or limited basis employees?
Seasonal.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Seasonal, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, trying to figure out too, we've had a lot of clients that want to have independent contractors. Well, what does that look like? What's the difference between, I know you guys have breached that in previous
No, no, I
online.
only laugh because that even just this week, everyone's like, "What are the top things you guys talk about all week long?" And I'm like, "Exempt versus non-exempt, and contractor versus employees, always and forever the top conversations of the week." So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So next question, somewhat related to employee categories. What do you say? I'm assuming, I don't know for sure you've encountered this. I have, and I know I've got my own flavor for it, but I'm wondering what your flavor for it is. What do you say to the businesses where when we say, okay, these are the employee categories, now we're sure everybody's categorized properly because we went over our payroll register and made changes accordingly. What about I want to change my benefits section that it is only exempt individuals that can get group health and life and sometimes time off benefits. What do you think? Like if I'm a client that's saying, well, you know what, now that I've really understand between the difference between exempt and non and who's full time and who's part time and is the juice worth the squeeze in investing in XYZ things? I don't feel like giving benefits to non-exempt full-time people. What's your advice? How do you navigate those conversations?
That's difficult because, first you have to understand why they feel that way. I think you have to dive into what's driving that decision. Is it financial? Is it, you feel that exempt professional administrative level type employees deserve a different benefit than non-exempt? Need to understand what your thought process is
Mm-hmm.
before I could even understand or a recommendation or think about providing a recommendation.
I just think you got to be careful too, because even if you're justified in your thinking, it's what are you going to take benefits away from somebody that has them now because they were in the wrong exempt versus non-exempt category? So that always worries me. It also always worries me about pitting one group of employees against another, for sure.
Yeah, the haves and the have-nots
Yeah,
is never a good engagement or
yeah.
culture kind of position to put yourself or your employees in.
Yeah, yeah. Particularly like if you've got like an administrative manager who you thought was exempt, but it turns out they're not when we do the Fair Labor Standards Act analysis. Um, it's the labor law that says, here's the thing. Whether they're exempt or non-exempt, that has everything to do with wage and hour compliance. It has nothing to do with making the employee less valuable in the workplace, right? Their
Yeah.
schedule is not going to change. You've probably figured out how to keep their pay whole. Or are you really going to take their benefits away? So it's if you really feel like you need to do that, this is where I think the value of actually talking to an HR consultant with experience comes in. Because again, what seems reasonable to you is just based on your context of the here and now, whereas you've got a consultant who's dealt with other situations like this across other industries. And we've seen some of the landmines, the things to consider and think through before you make that final decision and move forward. So, all right, something else that's foundational. We need to hire people. We have no idea what we're doing with recruiting. What are some of the foundational elements of your people ops infrastructure that make recruiting better, smoother, more effective, right people in the right seats? What do you need?
I think
I'm going to
I think
embark on a recruiting project. What do I have in my hand to get started?
yeah, you got to start with, understanding the full and creating a good job description before you can then even extrapolate what you need from the job description to do a job posting.
And what's the
So,
difference between the two? No one gets this. Yes. First of all, I see people on LinkedIn, HR professionals, posting a full job description as a job posting, and of course, my hair goes on fire. But talk about the difference between the two.
yeah, I mean, a job description really sets the day-to-day clarification, expectations, of their duties that they're going to be performing. Also, sets your standard of qualifications, provides the information around any kind of physical demands and also the work environment.
Mm-hmm.
So the job description is really, kind of that detailed clarification and expectation of what needs to happen for this job for somebody when they are ready to come on board, and
Mm-hmm.
also to hold them accountable during their job. So when we later talk about performance management, having a good job description helps support that. But going back to hiring, then, looking at how you're going to then advertise, if you will, your job. You're putting a posting out there that's really just going to highlight the company, who you are as a brand, as a company, and also the key components of what, this job entails, not the whole kit and caboodle of everything of the roles and responsibilities of day to day, but just highlights of what they're going to be doing, and obviously the qualifications, not only what they're going to be doing, sorry, but some of the skills that are required, and
Mm-hmm.
then obviously the qualifications to apply.
Yeah. It's so funny. It just dawned on me while you were explaining that. And I always think of easy ways to, because one of our core values is simplify. So, what's a simple way to explain this? Actually, if you think about it, you can easily discern from what you just said. A job posting is an advertisement. What's an advertisement designed to do? Sell something. When you sell something, you don't get in the weeds. You do get in the weeds when it comes to interviewing people to make sure you're putting the right person in the right seat so that then you have structure around what you're going to train them on, which is then the basis for how you evaluate their performance. That's all of the things of the job description. But the job description you still need as a roadmap to put the most critical things that you need out of the applicant pool on the job advertisement. So one is selling, one is selling versus structure, selling versus accountability, selling, attracting, selecting versus actual accountability and performance management is probably the dividing line. If you put any kind of had an opportunity to work on a job description where you got to get a little creative and you thought, hey, this is fun. I've never done it this way before. Got an example?
Not really that I can think of off the top of my head at the moment.
I had this, I wanted to share this with you because I don't, and then give everybody the benefit of talking it through. I had a recent, it's not recent any longer, but when I was trying to like really like think like an entrepreneur, and I said, okay, I probably have a 3-page job description, right? Because by the time you're done putting job title, pay range, which is required, and I don't even know how many states now, the summary of the role, the essential duties, don't forget other duties as assigned, knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
skills, and abilities. And then you've got like this sort of gray area. And quite honestly, I can't even keep this straight sometimes. Qualifications versus knowledge, skills, and abilities. But this was my aha moment where I was able to get creative. Distinguishing between the must haves and the nice to haves when it comes to qualifications for the job. And when it comes to pay transparency, what I was so excited about is it was almost an easy roadmap for frontline managers and people new to hiring, right? Minimum qualifications. I'm not even talking to these people unless they have the minimum qualifications. And if they do, and they do well during the hiring process, I will probably hire them close to the lower end of the pay range. But if I have somebody that's done really well with interviewing and they have some or all of those, what we call additional desired or extra, the nice to have qualifications, yeah, I'm probably going to make them an offer that's at the middle, not the top, the middle of the pay range. So I'm like an HR geek. I have fun with this stuff. But to that point, how do you easily explain the difference between qualifications and knowledge, skills, and abilities to people? Is there an easy way to explain that? Because I sure don't know it yet. I know how to put it on paper. I just don't know how to explain the
Yeah.
difference.
I don't know if there's an easy way. I would say, qualifications, you said the terminology of minimum qualifications. I think
Like
businesses
a
can,
like a high school diploma, minimum
right.
qualification. Right. Yeah.
Yes. And I have run into in previous jobs where people don't meet the minimum qualifications, where a department has revised a job description. You have somebody currently in a role and they don't now meet the minimum qualifications that you're looking for.
Oh,
So
that's
you're
tricky.
now putting yourself into a different compliance risk,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you have any other type of work contract, government contract. So I think getting business owners to understand qualifications are things that are required. A lot of the times, education I feel like is a hot topic right now around
It is.
qualifications.
Oh, you mean whether or
Um,
not you need to have graduated from college or not? That? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're an engineer, it's applicable.
Mm-hmm.
You need to learn certain skills through a college degree to have that. If you're an executive assistant, to a CEO, is that necessary?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's looking at qualifications of what really do you have to have in order to meet this job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to explain, I guess, is
No,
where I'm
it's
going
not
with
really easy to explain.
it.
Well, I can tell you this, like, I guess for us, we have set the standard that people get certified around here. That could be a minimum qualification, but what level of qualification, right? Like a required for us around here might be a SHRM CP, but a additional desired might be a SHRM SCP with federal contractor experience. So that's an easy example. And no, wouldn't put any of those under knowledge, skills, and abilities. The other creative part of job descriptions that I had an aha moment on. You've worked with me long enough that you know I love EOS and I love vision, mission, and values as sort of the beacon, the guiding light for keeping everybody rowing in the same direction. I figured out that if you did your values right, you could actually turn them into soft skills to be a good cultural fit at any level of the company. So we figured out a way that if a company has values, you turn those into everybody must have these soft skills. And it's the very first part of the bullets that would fall under knowledge, skills, and abilities. That's how you can have continuity across job descriptions with different scopes of work and different titles. But the common thread is everybody has these 5 or 6 soft skills because they're an inherent part of our culture. They tie to our values. So, well, thank you so much. Why don't we close off by you can pick what do you love about HR or why does everyone still hate HR? Your choice.
Oh gosh, I'm going to go with what I love about HR
Okay, good.
because I
The
think it
positive
also
one. I
speaks
like it.
to what people don't love about HR. I think it
Okay.
kind of combines them. I love working and partnering with leaders, owners on strategy. I feel that HR having a seat at the table is essential. Yes, a lot of the times you have to earn that seat, but to me that's part of the challenge is figuring out what makes people work to understand how I'm going to get in their good graces to be asked to be at the table. So I enjoy that. I enjoy trying to figure people out. I enjoy helping them then strategize for the business so it really impacts the bottom line in a positive way and a value add through all of this HR infrastructure that we're talking about. So,
Hmm.
for me, it's so cliche. It's truly the people component and the strategy of it that really, excites me.
Well, in
But
many organizations, the people is your biggest cost. So, to your point, where are we making sure we're getting the most out of that relationship? Where is it showing up in terms of add value? So, yeah. And you are right. I mean, that's the advice I'd give other HR professionals. Can't get on your high horse and just preach compliance to everybody. You really have to understand your audience and feel like how you can win them over so you can get a seat at the table and be regarded as a credible, effective member of that decision making team. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
you.
The two blondes. I don't actually recall how many other blondes we have on our team. Oh, Kim's another one. So blonde is
Lori.
better. Blonde and
Yeah.
Lori. Yes, blonde is better, everybody. Blonde is better. Thank you, honey. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.